Welcome back, everybody, to America on the Road. Jack Nerad with you, and we're lucky enough to be in the headquarters of Toyota here in, I think this is Plano, Texas, and with a terrific guest, really interesting guy who just has come off giving a very interesting presentation, Kevin Butt. Remind me of your title exactly.
Senior Director of Environmental Sustainability here for Toyota North America.
Sustainability, a big term. Big term. Maybe you want to define that for us. I think that's something that I got from your presentation. A lot of people talk sustainability. There's not much in the way of definition after that. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And sustainability to us here at Toyota and to me is, how do we continue to make a product and reduce the amount of impact it has on our surroundings, whether it's raw materials, whether it's where we build our plants. How do we do that in a way that we can be regenerative, if you will, in how we conduct our business?
Mm-hmm. And one of the things I took away too from your presentation is unintended consequences, and I think we see that in kind of everything we do. We see that in all kinds of regulations, all kinds of personal things that we do. You do something, you think something's a good idea, but it has consequences that you're not aware of. And I think there's a ton of that in sustainability. Walk us through a little bit of that. What do you think is going on there in terms of?
I think, one of the things that, I think moving towards electrification in our vehicles is generally a good idea. I mean, I'm all for that. Where I think we've rushed a little bit in this transition by demanding that, no more ICE vehicles by date certain, and
right.
The whole state's going to do this.
Yeah.
And then,
well, I come from one of those states. I come from California, where there is the mandate that no more non-electric vehicles or low-emission vehicles be sold after 2035. I mean, that's pretty draconian, I think.
Yeah. The impact of that is this unintended consequence, where now all the automakers are making these batteries for these vehicles that require additional mining, additional unfair labor practice, additional transportation of goods across the globe to be able to put into a car that's going to be driven in California or any other state, wherever they're driving them. And the other piece is that everybody is scared of the limited mileage they get, right? The range anxiety. So we're trying to build bigger and bigger batteries with longer range. And what we're finding is
more and more materials.
More and more materials.
Yeah.
And then we're finding that people aren't driving them that far because they've got that other vehicle that they drive for longer distances.
Yeah.
So you've got all this energy that's in this big battery that maybe gets used half.
Yeah.
And so then you built these batteries, you build all this, taking all this material, and you're not using it. Those are problems that we really need to have answers to, and not create this unintended consequence.
Yeah.
And the other fact, California is another prime example. You want all these BEV vehicles, but you don't have enough power.
Mm-hmm.
You have rolling
we face brownouts. Yes. Yeah.
So
at the same.
Yeah.
And infrastructure. I mean, there's so many issues. So many issues we could talk about. Let's take a little bit step back and look at this from a broader angle. One of the things you presented was, certainly Toyota is not denying that there is climate change. And tell us Toyota's position on climate change.
Yeah, we believe in climate change. We believe in climate change. We believe that we're part of the problem.
Yeah. Well, anybody who sees natural history has to believe in climate change, right?
Right.
It's always changed.
And so, therefore, we believe we got to be responsible enough to be part of the solution.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're trying to do.
And your solution is much broader based than just selling a bunch of electric cars.
Absolutely.
Right. So
it's about the whole conservation strain here. It's about water. It's about biodiversity. It's about the materials in which we use to build our cars. Where do we get those? How is that sustainable in transportation? But as I said in the presentation, water is going to be one of the biggest issues we face in my time.
Right.
And we're already facing water wars. Our population continues to grow. We have to feed them. We're draining our aquifers and growing corn and wheat, soybean. So we've got to really start to figure out, and Toyota needs to be a part of, how do we encourage broader thinking in solutions to this?
Sustainability is a lot more than just selling electric cars and calling it a day. Number one, that's tough enough to sell the volume of electric cars that governments suggest you should sell, that other manufacturers should sell, without literally forcing people to buy them. Walk us through that a little bit. Your thinking on that.
Well, again, as we go back, sustainability it goes back to the education of people as well, right? We as a country have been spoiled because we're a demand society. We don't think of the consequences of those products in which we buy. Let's break it down to a simple analogy. Let's go grocery shopping. Go to the grocery store, one of the big box stores that I won't name, and then you look at how those products are packaged. Package inside of package inside of package, and then a big box around that. So now you've bought all this material for what you thought was a good price, and you're going to consume it, but you've created all this waste from it.
Yeah, it's going to go into a landfill somewhere.
Go into a landfill. If your community doesn't recycle, then you're that's another problem.
Yeah.
So to me, everything is tied, right? You bought a car, okay? Car's great, but you got to look at the links of what it took to build that car and all the fingers that went out in the directions to get raw materials to build the car. Then the energy and the materials to paint that great paint color that's on the outside of that car. Right? And then the battery that's inside that car. All of those have tremendous links out to and cause impacts. And anytime anything changes, there's an unintended consequence because nobody thinks about that.
Right. One of the things Toyota has done, certainly Toyota is the leader in hybrids, has been for several decades now. My dad had an original Prius, by the way.
Nice.
Kind of cool. But you as a brand or you as a company have pushed hybrids maybe at the expense of pure electrics. Can you talk about that philosophy a little bit?
Toyota's always been conscious of what impacts are to the environment. I don't know if you remember that for years there were some ads that went out that had the Prius that was made out of sticks and that kind of thing. What we're trying, I think Toyota's position has long been conservation in manufacturing. If you go back to the Toyota philosophy, Toyota production system, MUDA is waste. Eliminate waste everywhere you go. So I think that's inbred in how we think about how we design what we do in our final product.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even in things like just-in-time manufacturing, delivery,
absolutely.
Then you're not warehousing things. You're not spending money on all that. You're not spending resources on that. You're not heating and cooling buildings because of that.
Exactly.
And so let's talk about infrastructure, because that's a key portion of sustainability that I think a lot of people just don't grasp when they think about car companies, right? But you have to grasp that in your job. And to get to carbon neutrality, which I think is your goal in 2050, that's certainly a big part of that. Walk us through that.
Sorry, I missed the first part of that question.
I probably did too. I guess the point is you're looking to get to carbon neutrality in 2050.
Yeah.
Beyond just what happens with the vehicles. A significant portion involves things non-vehicle related. Production related, office related, those kind of infrastructure issues. You got a big footprint in manufacturing in North America, for example. Walk us through things that you do in those situations, in infrastructure, your infrastructure, and with suppliers to reach sustainability.
Absolutely. Again, I don't want to overuse this term, but a lot of it is education and outreach to the people that are doing these jobs every day. Right? My job is I won't call it simple, but it is. I've got a direction. I'm focusing on, reducing the amount of energy demand that we consume, changing from simple things like water towers, changing into different types of technology, reducing the amount of simple things like compressed air that uses a ton of energy. We change all of those kind of things inside these manufacturing operations, which then reduces the amount of energy that I have to develop green energy for. But then we have a strategy. We know we're always going to use electrons. We're not going to get away from that, right? So then we have the strategy of long term, 15, 20 years, we have a 20-year strategy of implementation of virtual power purchase agreements, on-site power generation, use of fuel cells to be able to then cover all the energy demands that we have from our offices to our manufacturing operations. That is easy to say, but we're by the end of our 7th environmental action plan, we'll be at 46%, and that's in 2026.
Got it. Let's talk about a tangible example of that, what you're doing in Long Beach and how that works. Pretty fascinating stuff. A lot of your imported vehicles are delivered through the Port of Long Beach. Long Beach in California has, I think, even more stringent regulations on what happens in the port. You're responding to that. Walk us through that.
Yeah, it was one of those things that, as we were getting ready to refurbish the Port of Long Beach, it was time. It was an old structure, and to renew our lease, the Port of Long Beach said, "Wait a minute, now we need to talk about sustainability. How are we going to change what you're doing to benefit this port?" And we thought about that, and we came up. A gentleman by the name of Mark Yamauchi had this idea of, why don't we think about a molten carbonate fuel cell? And we all looked at him, and we kind of worked our way through that. And what this turns out to be, we're using, green hydrogen from the dairy operations in California, that we make pure hydrogen from that methane, and that generates it.
So you're bringing in that methane to
yeah, it's indirect biogas.
Yeah. Okay.
Directed biogas, I guess it really is.
Yeah.
And so then that molten carbonate unit generates pure hydrogen as a byproduct, more than we're putting in to run it. And while convenient that can be, because now we got all these fuel cell vehicles that are sitting there that we're fueling, as well as the dunnage trucks and the milk run trucks taking parts on and off site and delivering vehicles. Wow. And then another great product is hot water, pure hot water. So we use the heat off of that as a heat exchange and the water for car wash. And then we recover that. So, it was a win-win-win situation there with those three options. And and it saves us money.
Win-win-win.
What can go wrong?
Yeah, exactly. What should a consumer out there think about this? I have to, and I think a lot of us wonder if we think about it at all. At what cost does all this happen, right? Because there are costs to that. And I think that's one of the unintended aspects of this. I think a lot of people, virtually all people, want a clean environment, want the planet to survive, want all kinds of good things to happen for humanity. They also kind of want it to happen for free, right? They don't want to pay extra for their car. They don't want to, likely, a bunch of things. Walk us through kind of from the 35,000 foot level, your philosophy on all this and what people should be thinking about as consumers.
I think my philosophy is that I truly believe that if we educated people about every option that they had, whether an environmental option versus a non-environmental option, a lot of people don't know that they have options, right? So if we educate them, I like to think that 7 to 8 people would actually choose that green option, because they have that consciousness that, I can't just continue to take materials and not expect something to happen. So I think that number then might change a little bit when they figure out what the cost is of that.
Right.
So then it might not be 7 or 8, it may drop down to 5 or 6. But we're still going to get, I think, a majority of people that will decide, as they see the consequences that are happening in our environment, that something's going to have to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And so they may make those choices and make them, if the cost isn't exorbitant.
Yeah. Let me ask one more giant question. It's something I think about. We know the climate has always changed. It's continuing to change, and I guess a lot of people believe that humans are major contributors of it. Maybe the auto industry is a major contributor to it. Does it make sense to try to halt that change, or does it make more sense economically, for lack of a better term, better aspect to look at it, to just adapt to that, to adapt to a changing environment, which we're all doing all the time? Thoughts on that?
That is an excellent question. Given a lot of thought to that. Adapting to a new climate is going to have consequences to species all around the globe. So we're changing the environment. It's not just us, right? There's an ecosystem out there that depends on each other. You break off one branch of that ecosystem, unintended consequences happen to the rest of that ecosystem. So we have to really think about whether we're really going to adapt. It's not going to be temperature and water alone. There's going to be a lot of other consequences that impact us if we take that kind of attitude of, well, just the heck with it. Let's just adapt as change happens, right? People will have to move. Southwest United States, which is already, hotter than it ever has been, and they're running out of water. Colorado River, which brings water there, is drying up. All that consequence.
A lot more people are drawing off the same amount of water.
You talk about economic impact?
Yeah.
When you move the Southwest to Kentucky, where, the chances of, there's less harm right now, or move them to Canada, there's a lot of impact.
Right. Well, what would you say to, just kind of summing up as your role and what Toyota is doing in this area?
I think we're doing, the first thing is to recognize you're part of the problem. We've recognized we're part of the problem. I think what we're doing now is beginning to turn the rudder of a big ship and moving it in a direction that has more sustainability in front of it. The cars we're offering, the portfolio that we're operating under of different types of cars, more electrification, but in a responsible way of doing that is very important. But then all the other things that we're doing to work with our suppliers to help bring them into this understanding, educating, sharing solutions are all important. And then last, we got to get out in the community. As you use the term humanity, I think we're responsible for helping humanity be more humane. And so we've got to go out and help fix those things.
Yeah. Well, Kevin Butt, thanks so much for talking with us. I do appreciate it. Really thoughtful stuff today, and I appreciate what you said.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thanks. Stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back right here on America on the Road.